Alright, hello and welcome to today's video where we're going to be talking about taking ourselves back from spiritual materialism and what this means and why we want to bother doing it and how spiritual materialism can be a part of our lives even when we don't see it and why we would want to step out of that because at the end of the day, I think the real thing that we have to look at here is how spiritual materialism does not fill the void that we are trying to fill with real spirituality. And that is the main reason why we don't want to be kind of engaging in it and getting stuck in it and looping in it. Now, when I talk about spiritual materialism, what I'm talking about is the idea that we are taught in society and in a lot of our spiritual teachings right now that when you are doing your spiritual path correctly, that when you are living your purpose, that when you're doing what you should be doing, that wealth and money and success is going to follow. And that so long as you're living in alignment with who and what you should be, that you are going to manifest or attract or bring into your reality financial success, that you're going to be successful in the ways that culture tells us we need to be successful, that you're going to manifest your dream life and all of these things, and that if you are not having these experiences, if you're not manifesting wealth, if you're not becoming rich, if you're not becoming successful by the society's standards, that means you aren't really following your spiritual path and you're not really doing what you should be doing and you're not really living your true purpose and all of these ideas. And there are many things that I want to talk about with this because at the end of the day, again, I believe that there are two kind of conflicting desires, or not necessarily conflicting. There are two desires that are coming up when we look at spiritual materialism and why we might be attracted to spiritual materialism. And these two desires are being conflated with one another when really they don't really necessarily go together or have anything to do with each other. And when we get all wrapped up in trying to connect them, I think a lot of the time this is actually causing us more pain and more confusion than not. All right? So let's kind of again take a step back and really look at the roots of spiritual materialism. So I think if you are to study any kind of spirituality, any religion, any doctrine that claims itself to be a spiritual doctrine, not all of them, okay? Not every single one, but a lot of the major, especially more popular doctrines in Western cultures. So, like Christianity, Judaism, the Abrahamic religions, and then all of kind of the New Age and cult of mind, new thought movement, religious ideas. Pretty much all of them have some form of underlying message that to be blessed by God, to be chosen by God, to be living a true spiritual life means that you're going to be provided for and that you're going to get your needs met and you're going to be wealthy above and beyond other people, right? So if we look in the Bible, there are so many especially like right if you go through kind of the Old Testament, a lot of it is, God told me that if I do this thing or if I'm in alignment with this thing, that I'm going to be rewarded with children, that I'm going to be rewarded with crop, that I'm going to be rewarded with being the ruler of nations, there was a lot of talk about being blessed by God, following God properly, and in so doing, you are going to be provided for on a physical level, right? So back in the day, to have a lot of children was something that you wanted to do. That was something that to, pass on your family line, yes, but also having children to help you work in the fields and do all the things that you needed to do. Having children was something that added to your wealth a lot of the time. And then, all through the Bible, there's the promise of the chosen people being given the land, being given the provision, being given this or that this was going to be the reward for following God properly, that there was going to be some sort of external reward in the physical realm. So, this idea that if you're doing your spiritual practices properly and if you're following God properly, leading to you then getting an outcome that is benefiting you in the real 3D reality. This is not a new idea. This is not something that just came up because of Abraham Hicks. This is something that humans have been believing forever and ever and ever. Even if you study indigenous cultures and indigenous practices and superstitions, a lot of it was built around this idea that if we do the right things and if we appease the right gods and if we appease the right spirits and if we live in alignment with the way that we're supposed to be living in alignment, we are going to be blessed with crop. We are going to be blessed with provision. They're going to take the storms away. Right? This idea that spirituality and following your spiritual path and pleasing God is going to equal us getting our needs met and being safe and being provided for in real life is something that has been around for as long as spirituality has been around. Now, of course, there's kind of the flip side of the coin. There's lots of people and religions and doctrines that teach us that to abstain from our flesh and abstain from the things of the world is how we will be blessed by God and how we will prove that we are truly spiritual and all of that stuff. So there's absolutely that side of it. But that's kind of just not what we're going to be talking about today, because that's not really where a lot of people in the Western world are at when they are thinking about their spirituality and how it's going to affect them in the 3D world, right? Most of us are going to have interactions with a kind of spirituality that at least has some sort of root or some sort of idea around, if you are doing this correctly, if you are following your spiritual path correctly, there is going to be physical manifestation provision for you for doing that, right? And like I said, it comes in all sorts of different flavors. It comes in, like I say, in Christianity, if you are a faithful servant, you will be blessed. You will be blessed with children. You will be blessed with abundance. You will be blessed with whatever. There's the prosperity gospel in especially Christianity that's been around for a long time that says that when you're doing the right thing, that when you're following God, you are going to be blessed and you're going to have, this is why the pastors all have their jets and their giant houses and they can take all the tithing money and make it that they are enriching themselves because God wants you to be rich. And if you're really doing the thing that you're supposed to be doing and you're following God, that He's going to bless you abundantly. This prosperity gospel that's been around for literally hundreds of years. The idea of, like the think and grow rich. If you are in alignment with the universe, if you are positively thinking, the Abraham Hicks, if you can get your vibration right, if you can get your spirit right, if you can get yourself in alignment, that all of this is going to lead to you being able to manifest your perfect partner and manifest your perfect job and manifest wealth and all of this stuff. And like I say, these ideas are kind of baked into what most of us consider to be spirituality, especially in the Western world, because it's been such a part of spirituality in the Western world as we know it now, today, for so long. Okay? It's been around forever. If you do the right things, if you are being spiritual, if you are actually living a spiritual life, you are going to have the things you need. Now, if we just take again a step back and really think about this, we can see that the natural human desire to be safe and to be provided for and to have our needs met is something that we all share. Yes? That we are living in a world where we live in physical bodies that have physical needs, and we have mental and emotional selves that have mental and emotional needs. And when those needs are not met, we don't feel good. That's the bottom line. When we don't have food, when we don't have shelter, when we don't have love and connection and community, when we don't have provision on any level, we are going to suffer. And that suffering can be very traumatic, and especially throughout history, right? As we have been evolving as a humanity, we know that we have experienced long periods of time as a human species, as a human race, where we really didn't understand how the world worked, how nature functioned. We didn't understand a lot of things, and we didn't have the tools that we have now. We didn't have the resources that we have now. We didn't have the understanding that we have now. And thus we were far more vulnerable to the very harsh conditions of the natural world, right? Like, a lot of us kind of have this naturalist fantasy of, if we can just return to nature, everything would be amazing. And that a huge part of the reason we're all struggling and suffering and living such horrible lives now, and the reason we're sick and the reason that we're doing all of these things that don't feel good, is because we have separated ourselves from nature. And to a degree, I would agree with this. To a degree, we are a little too separated from nature at this point, and it is causing some some problems. However, if we really look at what life was like when we were just living in nature and when we were just connected to nature, there's a reason that we don't live like that anymore. There's a reason that we worked so hard to take ourselves out of the food chain. Because living so close to nature without technology and without understanding made us incredibly vulnerable, right? Because weather changes, storms, drought, animal attack, crops just not growing. There were so many things, diseases, just absolute, like, diseases that we would get because of lack of medicine, lack of surgery, lack of sanitation, all of these things. We have been incredibly vulnerable for most of human history. And being deeply connected to nature was incredibly threatening on a lot of levels. And when we had no other way of understanding why what was happening, and when we had no technology or ways of controlling what was happening, you can see how we would then want to project this idea of spirituality and God and spirits onto the reality in the hopes that we could appease the spirits and appease the gods so that they would bless us and reward us. Okay, and I've talked about this in lots of other videos, but I think it's important to talk about it again here, which is this idea that humans have been projecting ourselves onto reality as a way of trying to control the outcomes of our reality for as long as human history has existed, for as long as humans have been, right? So again, spiritual materialism has its roots in our desire to have our needs met. That's the bottom line. It comes from we want to live in a world where we have safety and we have security and we have access to the things that we need. And we have that in a way that we can predict and that is going to be reliable. That's what we want. That's what spiritual materialism all boils down to. What do I need to do and what do I need to be so that I will not suffer and I will have pleasure and provision? And beyond that, right? Like we want more than just having our needs met. A lot of us, we want to experience pleasure. We want to experience goodness. We want to experience expansion. We want to experience being able to be ourselves and adventure and all of these things. And that requires resources. That requires having security on some level that then allows us to go beyond just meeting our daily needs. We have a desire to express and to be connected and to adventure and to have pleasure, and that means we have to have our needs met. Okay? So that's the bottom line. We are humans who on some level understand that in order to have pleasure and in order to have expansion, we have to have our basic needs met. We have to have provision and safety. So that's what we have wanted forever. All right? And then, like I say, projecting it and making it a part of our spirituality, we can sort of see, again, if we sort of trace back and look at human psychology, we can see where that came from, right? So a lot of our human experience, what we experience as children in the first, especially 0 to 7 years of our lives, and what pretty much every human on the planet has experienced in this time of their life, was the reality that we did not have control over ourselves. We did not have control over our outcomes. We did not understand how the world worked. We could not meet our own needs. We could not understand ourselves. We instead were literally under the control, under the dictatorship of our caregivers. And from our perspective, it looked as though our caregivers were capable gods, right? That they were able to do literally anything to take away all of our pain and to give us all of our pleasure. That's how it appeared to us. As children, all of us grew up in a situation where we were completely dependent upon and vulnerable to our caregivers, and we relied upon them for absolutely everything. And it would have appeared to us as though they could provide for us anything that we needed, and that they could protect us from anything that hurt, and that that was what they were capable of. And then from our perspective, as children, we would have come to see that the one thing we had control over was our behavior, the ways that we acted. And it appeared to us as though our caregivers, were either providing for us, taking care of us, meeting our needs, helping us where we needed to be helped, whatever, or not, based on our behavior. It appeared to us that we could control how we were being cared for, how we were having pleasure and how we were getting out of pain, that we could control it through our behavior. Now, for most of us, in real reality, this wasn't actually true. For a lot of us, our caregivers were not providing for us, not providing a safe, secure connection, not giving us the things that we needed, not helping us, whatever. Not at all because of us. Not because of our behavior, not because we were doing something right or wrong, but because of their own conditions. What they were actually aware of, what they were capable of, how much they worked that day, and if they were tired, how much they were able to understand us or not understand us, their intellectual capacity, their emotional capacity, their financial capacity. But we could not perceive that. We could not perceive that caregivers were their own people that had their own lives, their own indoctrination, their own ways of doing things. We could only see, you're either responding to me the way that I want you to or not. And the only reason that I can think of as a small child for that is because of me and my behavior. Yeah? And then a lot of us did get taught also that these ways of being are not okay, these ways of being are expected, and whether or not that aligns with who you are as a human being, it doesn't matter, right? Many of us learned, okay, I can't cry because caregivers pull away when I cry, or I can't be loud because caregivers pull away when I'm loud, or I have to be a creative type, or I have to be this, or I have to be that. And the reason that we went along with that, the reason that we shut ourselves down, the reason we become people pleasers, the reason that we form insecure attachments, anxious attachment, we pull away, all of these things have at least their roots in the kind of care we got from our caregivers and our perception of that. Because remember, as children, we don't have clear perception. We don't have a clear understanding of how the world works and why our caregivers are the way that they are, and how their ideas for what is right and wrong and good and bad and acceptable and not acceptable might not be universal. All we know is if I'm not getting what I need from caregivers, there must be something wrong with me that's causing that. And I need to figure out who I need to be and what I need to be to try to get my caregivers to care for me. You see? Who do I need to be and what do I need to do? What do I need to live up to so that my caregivers will provide for me? And why are they pulling away? Why are they not giving me what I need? Why am I in pain? And what am I doing wrong to cause that? Okay, so the less of a secure connection we had with our caregivers, the less that they were able to provide for us, the more we were abandoned, the more we were stuck in pain and they couldn't get us out of our pain, the more they didn't provide us with, guidance, the more they left us to just make up our own minds when we were way too young to do that, the more we became aware of their incapacity before we were able to recognize that, the more we were abused by them and literally harmed and not given love, but instead given punishment over and over again, or unpredictable punishment, and all of these things, the more traumatized we were going to become about life in general, and the more hyper-vigilant we were going to become about our own behavior and looking for threat and perceiving that there's something wrong with me, because all of that made sense to the childhood self. The only reason I'm not getting my needs met is because I am doing something wrong. And if there was constant pain or constant lack of provision, there would be a lot of things we think are wrong with us, because our minds were just going to be constantly searching. Okay, well, what did I just do this time? And what did I do that time? And what did I do this time? And what did I do? What did I do to cause them to pull away this time? What did I do to cause them to be attacking on me this time? And again, it may have had nothing to do with our behavior. It may have literally just been they were unstable. They were not able to give us what we wanted and what we needed. They didn't understand childhood development, and they punished us for things that were absolutely normal and things that we should have been going through. They weren't able to provide guidance and help, and they just left us to our own devices too early. All of these things, yeah, from our childhood perspective, would have come down to, what am I doing wrong? How am I causing them not to love me? How am I causing them not to give me what I need? And how do I need to fix myself so that they will? That's the childhood perspective. I am not capable of taking care of myself. I am not capable of providing for myself. I am not capable of understanding how reality works. I am dependent upon these people approving of me, loving me, telling me what to do. And if for any reason I don't have what I need or I'm being harmed, all I know to do is to look for how my behavior was causing that. What is wrong with me? What I need to do or what I need to not do, what I need to become or what I need to not become, whether that's verbally explained or something our minds were just correlating. That would have been our conditioning. And then we go out into the world and we continue on with that. We continue on with that same idea. In order for me to be safe, in order for me to get what I need and what I want, I need the people who are in authority over me, my bosses, my peers, my friends, my coworkers, to approve of me. They are the ones that provide for me. They are the ones that give me answers. They are the ones that tell me what to do. And if they don't approve of me, if they don't love me, if they don't think I'm good, they're going to reject me, and then I'm not going to be safe, and I'm not going to get my needs met. Or we go the hyper-individualist route, right? Where we're just like, well, everyone's messed up. No one knows what they're doing. I can't trust anyone. And I have to be all on my own. And then these are usually the people who feel like there isn't a God or there is no spirituality, right? If they were abandoned over and over and over again and never had a secure connection, never had someone that they could rely on, a lot of the time this turns us into the people who just believe that there's nothing. And we're just here for ourselves and out for ourselves. So you can start to see how this might connect to how humans have formed our spirituality. So that's our fundamental view of the world. I need to be loved and I need to be understood and I need to perform for these people who have control over everything. And if I do it correctly, they will provide for me. They will give me everything I want and everything that I need, and they will take away all my pain, and I'll be safe, right? I want a secure connection. And then you can see how then we projected that into our spirituality. That so much of spirituality for all of human history is pretty much the exact same pattern of if we figure out what the spirits want, what God wants, what the universe wants, and if we measure up to that, if we become the thing the universe wants us to become, and then there's all different kinds of ideas about what the universe wants us to become or what God wants us to do, and that's all the different religions and all the different New Age thoughts and all the different traditions. But the overarching theme being, find the right thing, and then God will bless you. The universe will bless you with what you need, and you will have provision. So, right, in indigenous cultures, it was doing the right sacrifices, doing the right chants and dances. In Christianity, it was praying the right prayers and fasting from the right things and killing your kids sometimes, making the right offerings. In New Age thought, it's being positive and being productive and having high vibes only and getting rid of all of your negative emotions. It's finding your purpose. And if you find your purpose, you will become rich and abundant. And all of these ideas make perfect logical sense to us because they completely align with our childhood experience and everything that we created as being how the world works in childhood, right? And so we'll notice that a lot of the time that the people who, and this is just a general statement, this is not always, and I know that there are people who fall outside of what I'm about to say, but a lot of the time, the people who are able to find a sense of agency in their own lives, who are able to get to a place where they sort of understand how things work to a degree, that they are able to create a lifestyle that sort of works for them in a way that they can pretty predictably get their needs met, become less and less dependent or reliant upon religion. We will notice that a lot of the time, the people who are most drawn to religion are the people who are suffering in a way where they don't feel like they can get out of that suffering. They don't feel like they have autonomy in a way to get out of that suffering, and they're trying to figure out what rules to follow that will make this pain go away, right? Like when we look at cult dynamics and people who are most susceptible to getting pulled into a cult, it's the people who are dealing with chronic health issues that there doesn't appear to be an answer for, and a cult is telling you that we can heal you if you just follow this perfect protocol. The people who are suffering under late stage capitalism, who are struggling to make ends meet, who are struggling to have connection, who are struggling to be in a world where they feel safe. They get sucked into the idea of community and finding the right things and doing the right things. It's the people who are deeply vulnerable, who are lonely, who are isolated, who are in a situation of suffering that there does not appear to be a remedy for, that get most sucked into cults. And it's also those people who tend to turn to religion and spirituality. We turn to it a lot of the time, most of the time, when we're struggling and suffering and we have run out of answers or we don't know where else to look. Because of course, we are trying to figure out how to get out of suffering. And the childhood reasoning says the way we get out of suffering is we figure out what the rules are so that we can behave properly, and then we will get our needs met. And to a degree, this is how reality works, and to a degree, it's not quite how reality works. So I got one question. It's the I think you're projecting or projection in spiritual circles for me that gets thrown around like candy in the wellness world. Massage therapy in my case, LOL. Yeah, definitely. And the idea that, you know, a lot of people use you're just projecting as a way of not taking responsibility for their own behavior is shitty. And I want to validate that. That a lot of people say, you know, you're projecting your own stuff onto me instead of being able to just say, yeah, no, that thing I did was shitty and I'm sorry. And that sucks. And I'm sorry that people do that. And if you have been on the receiving end of the you're just projecting, you're upset because you're projecting, this has nothing to do with me projecting, I'm sorry, that sucks. Because even if you are, I think it's always still someone. We can always be compassionate with people, even if they are projecting, and be like, okay, what are you thinking? What are you perceiving? What did you think that I meant? What did you think that I did? How can we, figure this out together? Anyways, side tangent. Okay. So again, in real reality, we do live in a cause and effect world. We do live in a real reality where our actions do cause outcomes. That is absolutely a real thing. Which means, on some level, all of us have a certain level of autonomy over the circumstances and the conditions of our reality. This is true. And we also live in an incredibly complex universe and cultural structure where we are affected by things that have nothing to do with us. Things that have nothing to do with the choices that we've made. The very idea, if you are born into a position where your family has wealth and you're able-bodied and you are a holder of the correct passport, you are going to have a very different level of options available to you in order to make your life good than someone who's born into a chronically ill, impoverished nation with the wrong passport. Wrong being in quotes, just being less access to the world. If you were born into a situation where you have access to quality education versus no access to quality education, if you're born into a situation where you have relative food security versus no food security, your amount of choices, the amount of autonomy you are going to have, the distance that your choices are going to go, the amount of effort you are going to have to put in to create change in your life, these things are all going to be different. So even though everyone within their own circumstances does have choice and does have a level of autonomy, we don't all have the same choice and the same level of autonomy. We are all operating within systems and conditions that limit or help us, depending on our conditions. And it's always been that way. It's always been that way. And I think humans have a really hard time holding both of these things at once. So again, the more we feel like we are not getting our needs met, that we're not safe, that we're not secure, the more, a lot of the time, we're either going to go into childhood reasoning and thinking, looking for spirituality or God or the universe to give us the rules so that we can try and follow those rules and behave how we're supposed to behave and hope that we will be blessed. Or we, see a lot of people going the other way and just believing that there's no hope and there's nothing we can do and there is no God and there is no spirituality and just give up on the whole thing, right? So again, we can see how this whole thing happens. And then especially living in our world today, in our culture today, which is so much about the idea that happiness and fulfillment and feeling how we want to feel comes from physical provision, comes from luxury, comes from how things look versus how they are. We can start to see that, again, spiritual materialism getting ramped up to the millionth degree. Because number one, we're living in a system that is deeply unfair, that is not equal opportunity for all people, but we are being told that it is. Okay, we live in a world where we are constantly being told that if you live in the Western world, we all have the same number of hours as Beyonce, right? Like that saying. That everyone has the capacity to make the right choices and do the right things, to have wealth, success, abundance, all of these things culture is telling us that we need in order to be happy. And that the only reason you don't have those things, wealth, health, abundance, community, provision, is because you are doing something wrong. That's baked into our culture. We are not trained to look for systems. We are not trained to see how we do not have equal opportunity. We are in fact trained to see the opposite. Because that's how our power structures stay the way that they are. The more we are convinced that we all have equal opportunity, and that the people who are successful in our culture are just the ones who are making the right choices, the more we believe that, the less we are going to be aware of what's actually happening, and the less we are going to start to demand that things change so that more and more of us can have safety. So there's that. And then on top of that, we are conditioned over and over and over to believe that the thing that makes us happy is wealth and abundance. That the thing that we need in order to feel safe and good enough is not just enough, but we have to be up with every trend. We have to be going on luxury vacations. We have to own homes. We have to have we have to always be leveling up. And this has snuck its way into our spirituality, self-help, and personal growth, right? This is why in the mystery school, we deconstruct all of this. Because it's literally everywhere. This idea that you're not doing your spirituality right, you're not doing enough practices, you're not being positive enough, you're not healing enough, it's your childhood trauma that is holding you back from having wealth and abundance and the perfect relationships, and you have anxiety and depression because you're not regulating enough, and blah, 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 blah. It goes on and on and on and on and on. That the reason you are suffering is because you aren't trying hard enough, you aren't doing enough, you aren't following the rules enough. So we can be literally fundamentalist Christian or the most new age ever, and we're still believing the same fundamental idea. You are either following the rules or not following the rules. And you are either being rewarded or punished because you're following the rules or not following the rules. Childhood thinking. Right? And so what we need to understand here is that this quest for spiritual abundance, this spiritual materialism, it's distracting us from reality. It's distracting us from the reality that, yes, we want safety and provision. And it's blocking us from being able to look at the systems we're actually living in and how they do or do not support this end. It's making it all about our personal choices and our personal behavior instead of being able to take the bigger picture into reality. And this is reason number one why we need to take ourselves back from spiritual materialism. So long as you are still believing that the only reason you are experiencing what you're experiencing is because of your choices, is because you're either spiritual enough or not spiritual enough, because you're being blessed or punished based on your thoughts or your vibration or your emotions, the less you are going to be able to see real reality. It's a big problem. Okay? The people who have taught this idea that the people who are the most successful are the ones who have the highest vibration and the ones that are most in alignment with reality. It is a scam. It's a fraud. It's not reality. I'm going to put links in the description of all of these videos to 2 podcasts that you can go listen to from Rachel Key Alberts, where she talks about debunking the Think and Grow Rich. And she's got lots of other podcasts on this. So I highly recommend going and listening to her work. Because, again, it is provably, verifiably false that the people who are the wealthiest in our society are the ones who are the most in alignment with spirituality, who are the ones who are living their purpose. It's just not reality. The dude who wrote Think and Grow Rich scammed his way all the way through. It was a big fraud. He was never someone who even could demonstrate the veracity of his own claims. There's a reason people go to the Abraham Hicks meetings over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And we're not seeing like an outcropping of just like millionaires from following those teachings. Because it's not real. It's very much not real. The people in the Christian church who are manifesting wealth and abundance, being blessed by God, are not the ones who are the most faithful servants. They're the ones who are defrauding their congregation and cheating on their taxes and running the government. The people at the top of our systems are the most greedy among us. If we really take a step back and look at this, if we're really honest with ourselves, to think that there's some universal principle that says if you're in alignment with spirituality, you're going to be blessed with abundance. And that we have any kind of actual certifiable proof that that is true. In real reality, we're kidding ourselves. So it's wrong. And it keeps us navel-gazing and being stuck in loops of trying to fix ourselves and trying to improve ourselves and trying to be in control of our thoughts and our emotions so that, again, we will never look at the systems. Christianity has used this trick for a very, very, very long time. Get a whole population of people to believe that their natural sexual instincts, that their natural desires for all sorts of things are wrong, bad, and evil. And you will have a whole bunch of people who are so focused on trying to control what cannot be controlled, trying to get rid of what cannot be gotten rid of. So they have a constant project, and therefore they are too distracted to see how they are being taken advantage of by the power structures. It's not real. It's not true. Systems. And then second thing, like I say, it takes us out of being able to step into our adult perspective, where we can start to recognize and witness where we do have power, where we do have actual autonomy, where we can take steps in real life to heal, to do better for ourselves, to learn how to communicate, to say no, to, educate ourselves on how the body functions, where we can do things within the realm that we exist in to make our lives actually better without feeling like we have to live up to and impress something or someone in order to get our needs met. It distracts us from growing into the adult perspective that says, now as an adult, I need to figure out what I need, what is helpful for me, what is not helpful, what is reasonable, what I have access to, what I need help with, what I don't need help with, what I can do on my own, what I can't do on my own, the steps that I can take, the healing that I need to do in order to have better relationships and all that stuff, or where it's just, I'm going to be a human who's going to mess up, and this is just what life is. Right? It stops us from being able to see true cause and effect for how it is, and where we have actual power within that. When we're stuck in the loop of how do I impress Sky Daddy, we're stuck in childhood reasoning, where we didn't have autonomy and we didn't have capacity to figure anything out on our own. Right? So again, it blocks us from being able to see real reality. Now, am I saying that we shouldn't have any spirituality? Am I saying that there can't be miracles and things that happen that are beyond the choices that we have made? Absolutely not. Okay? I am someone who has a very deep spirituality. I am someone who truly believes that there is something greater than myself that cares about me and that is leading me and guiding me. But that leading and that guidance and that care, a lot of the time, comes down to me asking for wisdom about what to do when I'm struggling and suffering. It comes down to me accessing that feeling of being loved to give myself a sense of safety, even when I don't have that in the external reality from anybody else. There is still deep spirituality, a deep connection to something greater than ourselves that can come from something other than what do I need to do to impress the gods so that I will be given what I need. And a lot of the time, again, the first step for a lot of us is to start to recognize and realize that satisfaction in life is not going to come from luxury and abundance and keeping up with cultural standards of what is and isn't enough. We need to deprogram ourselves from that. That the spiritual abundance idea is holding ourselves back from what's actually fulfilling and purposeful and meaningful in life. The more we're continuing to pursue what culture tells us we're supposed to pursue in terms of what a good life is, the more we're going to be distracted. And the more we try and spiritualize it, again, the more we're going to be distracted. Understanding that yes, we are humans who have physical needs and mental needs and emotional needs. And if those needs aren't met, we aren't going to feel good. And being able to validate that, and again, see where systems are the problem, to see where we have choice within the systems, to ask for help, to look for real community, to start to step outside of our hyper-individualist culture that says we should all just be fighting for ourselves. These are the solutions. Systems, real community, asking for help, not blaming ourselves, figuring out where we have autonomy and where we don't, working within that. We acknowledge these things. And then trying to find real spirituality that goes beyond, I need to do the right thing so that I will be given what I want. Because I don't think that that kind of spirituality is actually fulfilling. Right? I think a lot of us are looking for purpose and meaning beyond the physical reality. And spiritual materialism distracts us from being able to find that. It distracts us from being able to really dig into what is meaningful for you. What makes life worth living for you? What is valuable to you? If you start to actually get to know yourself and you separate yourself from what culture has told you is meaningful and valuable and what you need to be and do and what you should and shouldn't do, and if you can start to separate yourself from this idea that you need to be approved of all the time, what's actually going to lead you to feeling fulfilled as a human being? Right? And those are the deep questions that actually take us on a spiritual path. So spiritual materialism is just a mindset that distracts us from systems. It keeps us navel-gazing. It keeps us obsessing with things that are not going to fulfill us. It keeps us distracted from the actual problems of not enough in our culture. It keeps us elevating and praising people who are the most greedy and selfish. And again, supporting these systems that rely on exploitation. And it distracts us from figuring out what actually has value and meaning. And this is why we want to unpack it. This is why we want to dismantle it. This is why we want to question, is this really spirituality or is this just materialism? Is this just more individualization? Is this more just consumerism for the point of consumerism? Is this still the indoctrination that I'm not good enough and worthy of love unless I have and do and be these things? These are the questions we want to start to ask ourselves if we want to start to connect to real spirituality. And to start to see that you are not suffering and having lack of provision because some God or the universe is mad at you. That's the biggest takeaway that I want you to take away from this. You are not suffering or not having your needs met because you aren't living up to the expectation of the universe or God. That's not why. And I never want you to feel like that is the reason. You are not broken and you are not deserving of suffering because you don't measure up. That is the main thing we need to step out of with spiritual consumerism so that we can start to see real reality. Okay? So go check out Rachel. Listen to her podcast. I think these things are really good for helping us to break down spiritual materialism. And then what if you were to step outside this idea that the reason you're suffering is because you're not good enough? And what if you were to start to consider what is actually meaningful and valuable and purposeful to you versus how do I get as much for myself and live in alignment with the ultra consumerism of our culture so that you can start to experience real spirituality and real empowerment. These are the two things that you really want. Okay? Okay. So that's it for today. I hope that was helpful. Let me know what you think. Go check out Rachel. And I will see you next week. Have a good week.